When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
The Disney Plus Hulu HBO Max bundle. The ultimate bundle at an unbelievable price. Starting at $19.99 a month. On Disney Plus, go behind the scenes with Taylor Swift in The End of an Era.
Every single one of us all clicked together.
Battle it out with The Roses on Hulu.
Things are getting a little out of hand.
Well, you think?
And don't miss The Conjuring, Last Rites on HBO Max.
I don't know how to protect you this time.
All these and more streaming this month. Plans starting at $19.99 a month. Terms apply. Visit Disney Plus Hulu HBO Max Bundle.com for details.
Hey, where you been? Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means, that's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. Ohio State officially has its destination for the college football playoff, but it does not yet have an opponent. It'll have to wait a little bit longer for that. The Buckeyes, after their 13-10 loss to Indiana in the Big Ten championship game, that means Indiana is the only remaining undefeated team in college football. They will be the number one seed, though the committee clearly impressed by what they saw from both teams who were considered the top two teams in the country in the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State only drops one spot. They had been number one in every single ranking until now. Now they're number two, and they will wait at the Cotton Bowl for the winner of the Texas A&M Miami game for their opponent. If they win, if things are a wash, they'll play Georgia in the Fiesta Bowl, and maybe Indiana will be waiting for them in Miami in the national championship game. Stefan, when you look at Ohio State's draw and their path to the college football playoff, I guess we can start there. What do you think about their chances of repeating? In fact, I gave our survey to our texter, 614-350-3315, and I literally asked them this question, now that you know the path. How far do you predict Ohio State to go? Quarterfinal, semifinal, national championship game, and national champions. What do you think? What do you predict how far you think the Buckeyes can go now that you know their path?
Well, I still think Ohio State's going to win a national championship. But I do think it's a difficult path, and it starts with the draw they get in the first round, right? I think Miami's a good team with especially guys that can create havoc. And after you see what Indiana's defense did against that offensive line and what they were able to do to affect Julian Sayin, you see a guy like Ruben Bain, and you get a little bit concerned about what that type of matchup could look like. So that's kind of where I go first. Is this Miami team and this Texas A&M team both have some good defensive fronts that can create trouble. Then you kind of look at if there's chalk and who you get in the semifinals. You look at Georgia and what they have up front defensively, and then obviously on the other side of the bracket, we'll see how it all pans out. And if you get Indiana again, I mean, you just saw what Indiana's defense could do. So it's a tough draw, right? And another caveat on top of this is Texas A&M beats Miami. You just played Texas in the Cotton Bowl in January, and now you might have to play Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl on December 31st. That's not particularly the easiest thing. Ohio State fans did travel well and were well represented in that Cotton Bowl, so I'm sure that'll be the case again, even against Texas A&M. But it's a pretty tough draw, right? You could have a semi-road game in the quarterfinals, or you could go up against guy in Ruben Bain, who might be a top 5, top 10 draft pick in a few months. And the last time we saw Ohio State play, we saw guys get into backfield and creating, havoc for Julian Sayin in that offense. And then you look down the road, Georgia, I think, is probably the best non-Big Ten team in the tournament. And then, like I said, Indiana on the other side and who you could potentially see in the championship. So it's a tough draw. I think it's easier than last year because you're playing one fewer game, right? I think the 4-game stretch last year where all 4 of those teams were top 8, top 10 teams in the rankings was a little bit tougher. But this is no cakewalk over a 3-game stretch. And I think you throw on top of that, it felt like for 12 weeks, this Ohio State team was separated from the pack, right? It was kind of Ohio State versus the field. Who would you take? And a lot of people were saying Ohio State. Our lasting memory is this team looking beatable and this team losing. And that's something that kind of lingers as you look at the stretch ahead and the teams that they could face. A lot of what we saw in terms of struggles against Indiana could be problems against Texas A&M, Miami, Georgia, Indiana again. So we'll see what happens, how this all unfolds. But it's certainly no cakewalk, and I don't think Ryan Day views it that way, and I don't think this Ohio State team views it that way. There's obviously now a little bit of a chip on the shoulder taking a loss and going into the college football playoff, and it's not too similar to last year, right? Because the game was so, the rivalry is so emotional, and there's that element of it. But Ryan Day said this is a pissed off team, and we saw what it looks like when Ohio State plays pissed off in the playoff last year. So they're still the favorite. I think they're still going to win it all. But this draw is not. It's not a breeze. It's not a breeze.
What do you think, Gillis?
Yeah, I said this on our video. Ohio State, I think there's probably some people in that building, and there's probably some people listening to this that will probably say, damn, they couldn't have put Georgia at the 2 seed? Because at that point, then, Ohio State is playing either Ole Miss or Tulane in the in the quarters. I think that is an easier matchup than whatever they're going to have in Dallas. Miami ranks 17th in the country in sacks. They have 34. Texas A&M was tied for number 1 with Oklahoma. So these are two of the best pass rushing teams. For context, Indiana, which did play an extra game and did get after Julian Sand, had 39 in 13 games. I think they had 5 or 6 last night as we record this pod. So Indiana kind of on par with Miami in terms of getting after the quarterback. Obviously, we're still looking, we're still just kind of learning this information. We were driving when they announced the bracket. So I think we'll get deeper into those teams. But yeah, that's the first thing that I look at. I think if I was an Ohio State fan, I would very much want Miami to win that game. I would not be scared of Miami at all, but A&M could present some troubles. I think that Marcel Reed at quarterback could do some stuff running the ball. That defensive line, as I just showed you, is really, really good. I know A&M has, people are probably all that not scared of them. They look at the South Carolina game. They just lost to Texas. But I do think Texas A&M is probably a better challenge. And then, you would have Georgia waiting for you. And then, maybe Indiana on the other side of the bracket. So yeah, this is a tough draw, but I do think they're probably going to win the national championship again. It is a tougher draw than I think maybe we thought it was a couple hours ago. I think I think their quarterfinal matchup is going to be tougher than what we thought. I think we were kind of all projecting Georgia or Ohio State to be that 2-3, but tough matchups, and it's going to be fun. Ohio State could have SEC and go right back to get your lick back against Indiana. So it's for the Ohio State fan who is sitting there thinking, I want easy, maybe not, but you certainly get some interesting matchups.
So we refreshed it again. Yeah, 61% of our texters said national champions. Like nothing changed. And to be honest with you, I think part of it is the way Ryan Day talked on Sunday. I think Stefan, you and I were talking about it coming off of the indoor. It was we lost, but like Indiana's a good football team. But we did a lot of dumb stuff in that game that if we just don't do these dumb things, we win the football game, right? Indiana was averaging 40-plus points per game, and they held them 13 points. If Ohio State makes a chip shot field goal, they go to overtime. Anything's possible. Ohio State finishes one of its multiple trips to the red zone with a touchdown. They win the football game. And I kind of believe him. I'm kind of on his side with that situation. And our Texans are too. 18% said national championship game. 17% said semifinal. 5% said quarterfinal. Is it really that hard? I mean, I get it. Yeah, it could have been Tulane or Ole Miss, which is like a G5 school, or a team whose head coach abandoned them at their time of need. But I don't know, man. Like, Indiana's going to play Alabama or Oklahoma. Texas Tech is going to play Oregon. I don't know. Would you rather, I don't know, like...
Well, I was more talking about it from after last night.
Yeah, sure.
Once
but
we
I still
knew
think
that they had lost.
I think they have the second easiest path. And it's simply because both of the teams that they are up against are Power Four teams whose coaches didn't abandon them at their time of need. I'm not going to stop poking at Lane Kiffin this entire pod. I'm going to call Ole Miss the team that got abandoned by their coach in the time of need the entire pod. But also, I think losing to Indiana the way they lost to Indiana is why I'm not scared of Texas A&M and Miami. Because I think for 12 straight games, we've been yelling, right guard, right guard, right guard. Why so many tight ends? Why so many tight ends? Why so many tight ends? Are JJ and Carnell okay? Are JJ and Carnell okay? Are JJ and Carnell okay? Why can't you finish in the red zone? Why can't you, right? All of those things we've been talking about for 12 games. It's just Indiana was the first team who had not only a defense who could not just highlight it, but just magnetize it, but also an offense that can make you pay for it. I'm not looking at Miami's offense and I'm scared that they're going to make me pay for it. Marcel Reed can run around a little bit. He can scoot. Okay, so could Damon Williams. And this is, and I don't want to. We're not going to dive deep into Miami and Texas A&M today, but I don't know, man. I don't. I think our texters. I think Day. I'm not. I don't think anybody's looking at this and going, man, this is steep. I think they're looking at it like they just played a pseudo national championship game Saturday night, and it came down to couldn't score in the red zone, couldn't execute in the red zone, and your kicker missed a 26-yard field goal. Let's clean up some things, and we have 4 weeks to clean up those things. Right now, I am inclined to believe that Ohio State is going to be waiting in Miami for Indiana. And unfortunately, the 1 seed got kind of screwed again. Not as screwed as they did last year, because there's not a team of Ohio State's caliber who just fumbled into the regular season, and now they're the 8 seed when they should have been the 5 or 6 seed. Sure. But I'm inclined to believe Ohio State's going to be waiting in Miami, and Indiana will be meeting them there. Because the further I get away from last night, the more I'm like, there's not 2 teams who are more complete than what these 2 teams are. They just didn't play perfect, and somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. So I don't know if this playoff path scares me significantly less than last year's scared me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And also, I mean, like, and look, this time you get a bye, right? You know, you're 2 wins away from a national championship compared to 3, excuse me. Yeah, I think, you know, there's definitely that case of like who has the tougher path, Indiana or Ohio State. I think Georgia has the easier path than Ohio State right now, but I don't know if there was a realistic matchup that Ohio's like win or lose in the Big Ten championship game. I don't know if there was a realistic matchup that we would have left that stadium and went, oh boy, I don't know if they're getting back to the national championship game. Because I think we went in thinking they were the best team in the country, and we left that game thinking they're the second best team in the country. Like nothing about that performance showed me that, like, you know, Georgia might get them. You know, Georgia, I feel better about Georgia, or I feel better about, you know, whoever they could play. So I don't know if there was a realistic, we get on here and go, man, this is trouble before they get to Miami. I don't know if that was like even in the realm of possibility.
I think if they would have been the 1 seed, I'd have been more, you know, and the reason why is Bama can throw it. And they can't run it, but they can throw it. And I don't like the way Jermaine Matthews has looked for the past month. And I mean, Indiana made it a point to attack Lorenzo Styles early in that game. The thing is, there are only 2 teams in this pool where I feel like they have a quarterback and some receivers who can make you feel a little antsy about coverage. Especially since, I mean, they run a lot of cover 3. Their shell a lot of times is cover 3, which means you got 1 single high safety because they trust their corners to win one-on-ones. And they've had good reason for most of the year to trust their corners to win one-on-one, which is why what we've seen from Jermaine really the past couple of weeks, Stefan, that has been out of character. We're talking about a dude who the first game of the season literally ran a route for a receiver and got a pick. So it's been out of character, right? But if you don't have the passing threat to go along with your defense, it's hard for me to wrap my head around the idea of you beating Ohio State. And so because of that, I wrote this as soon as it came out. I think this was
A&M's got a pretty good batch of receivers.
They do, but like Marcel Reed's 5'7", 125 pounds, and he doesn't always get it there. That's you know what I'm saying? He scares me more as a runner than he does as a passer. You know what? Actually, I think if Ty Simpson were Texas A&M's quarterback, now we're cooking with hot grease.
Yeah. If a good team had a better quarterback, it's very brave of you to say that.
Thank you. It took a lot. It took a lot of me to say that. I am so. I guess I'll ask this thing because I asked our Texans this too. I put everybody but Indiana in this question. The rest of the field, rank these teams based on who you think is the biggest threat to Ohio State, other than Indiana. Stefan, what would be your top 4? Like, I don't like that Ohio State has to play this team.
Out of any teams in the field outside of Indiana,
yeah.
Georgia number 1. I think Georgia's rounding into form. I think Georgia's just a good team. Georgia number 1, Oregon number 2, Texas Tech number 3. They'll suck after that. Oklahoma number 4. Oklahoma's defensive front is maybe the, you know, right up there with Ohio State's in terms of best in the country. So I'll say Oklahoma 4.
Gillis, what's your top 4?
4 biggest challenge. I think Georgia's 1 outside of Indiana, obviously. Georgia 1. I think A&M 2. Oregon 3. I'll say this is hard. The fourth is hard because I think there's a steep drop off after Oregon, Georgia, and A&M. Not scared of Miami at all. I don't think they're that great. Not scared of Bama or Oklahoma at all. So I guess maybe just Texas Tech by process of elimination. Like we were talking about this in the car. Like Texas Tech got their oil money together, and like everybody can point to that's why they've been, kind of throwing it around. They've also spent their money well, and they've spent their money well in the trenches. Like it's one thing to just spend like a pissed off teenager with mom and dad's credit card. It's another thing to buy some stuff that actually works for you. So I'll say that. I'll say Georgia 1, A&M 2, Oregon 3, and then Texas Tech 4. And 2 of those teams are on the other side of the bracket.
Which is like, yeah, that's the key thing here. And that's why I asked the question. Georgia was the clear number 1 for everybody. And I think it's like 1.41. They got significant amount of first place votes. In fact, they got 75% of the first place votes. And I think it's because, one, it's the only team in the bracket who has like the recruiting talent in the dogs, no pun intended, to like, okay, we're down to we're playing our third cornerback. Okay, we're playing our third cornerback. We're playing our third linebacker. Okay, we're playing our third linebacker. Hey, we rotate 4 on the defensive line. Okay, we rotate 6 on the defensive line. What are you talking about right now? This is not a thing. They have the dogs. And Kirby Smart's the only active head coach in college football with more rings than Ryan Day, and he beat him head to head. And they have to get through them to get to the national championship. Now, that won't be in the Peach Bowl. If Ohio State wins in the Cotton Bowl, they'll be going to the Fiesta Bowl, which I think can help because I think that favors Ohio State more than it favors Georgia because Ohio State's got a strong history with the Fiesta Bowl. And Ohio State fans travel regardless, but not having to play Georgia in Atlanta, Georgia, where Georgia seems to play a game there every 14 weeks or so is probably going to be helpful there. The number 2 is Oregon. Texas Tech is number 3 for them, and then Texas A&M is number 4. Like Oregon and Texas Tech are kind of, you could have interchanged them for them, and then they had Texas A&M at number 4 with Miami at number 5. I think Miami was number 5 because they think Texas A&M is going to win the football game, right? And then the rest of the bracket are just teams that they're not going to deal with. Alabama's not good, but they do have this one element to their game that if it gets hot, Stefan, they can rattle off 4 straight. If you have a passing attack in the playoff and it gets hot, you can rattle off 4 straight if you start winning games 38-33. Do I think it's going to happen? No. But the reason why I put Alabama 4 on my list would be simply because if we're at that point where Alabama's playing in the national championship game, that means they're rolling. That would legitimately make them this year's version of Ohio State. Where they had, instead they're going to play on the road, they're going to go to Oklahoma, but they would have won at Oklahoma. They would have beaten Indiana in the Rose Bowl, and they would have probably beaten Oregon in the Peach Bowl. So they'd be rolling at that point. And looking at the teams where momentum does matter, I think momentum helped Ohio State last year and how they got rolling. I'm looking for the team who has to play in the first round that right now I don't think any of us are thinking about, because they're on the other side of the bracket and they have to win 3 games to get to Ohio State. If they win 3 games and they're rolling like that, all right, it becomes a momentum conversation, and maybe they have enough momentum to at least scare Ohio State for a little bit.
Yeah. If there's a team any team that you meet in the national championship, in theory, would have gotten hot and started rattling some things off. So, yeah, I see where you're coming from on that. I agree with you. Like, they have the passing attack where if it gets hot, they can win 4 games in a row. I just, from what we've seen, I think you would agree. I don't trust that passing attack to put together 4 games. But if they put together 3, we're talking about Alabama in a whole different light because they've shown us that they can string it together. So
Herb Street said this on ESPN, and I know Herb Street is a very interesting caricature for Ohio State fans. It's just they won by 7 against South Carolina in a game they played like crap. They beat LSU that had already fired their coach by 11. Lost to Oklahoma. SoCon Saturday, they played Eastern Illinois, played terribly against Auburn, got destroyed by Georgia. It's just Alabama, frankly, for me, is not even like a consideration in terms of like the top 4, just because like, yeah, they can get hot, but like we also don't have evidence of them getting hot since before Halloween.
Yeah. They just look like 21 OSU to me.
They're leaking oil.
21 OSU was like, listen, they have this thing that goes supernova and no one has anything to do about it. Everything else is pretty wishy-washy. But if you get CJ Stroud, Garrett Wilson, Jack Smith, and Chris Olave in a playoff game and they get rolling, that's a lot to deal with, even if everything else is not that good. And that's what they look like. If you get Ty Simpson and those receivers rolling, that's something to deal with. But you both are correct. Just like 21 OSU. It's if it gets rolling, it's dangerous, but also it kind of has to get rolling or they're going to lose football games. Which is why they're 4 for me, because they're the distant, off in the distant thing that maybe they get to Bama, maybe they don't get to Bama. Any other thoughts we want to share before we take a break? Because we did talk to Ryan Day. We're not going to talk about the Big Ten championship game on here in terms of like a big meaty breakdown of it. We'll do that on Tuesday. The Leave No Doubt pod is moving to Tuesday. And listen, we got a shout out from Ryan Day. He literally said it. We're supposed to leave no doubt. We didn't do it. So he answered the question for us. And so we'll get into that on Tuesday. We'll also, as I said last week, we're going to break down the recruiting class now that it's done.
And we can actually do it.
And we can actually talk about the thing. We know the Legend Bay thing is going on. We'll talk on that later this week. And then I think we're expecting Julian Sand to still get an invite to New York. He's not going to win the award, but we'll probably talk about that later on this week as well. Any other thoughts on the college football playoff?
Let me say this. This is the extent of what I'll talk about with the Big Ten championship game, because I think we're going to talk about Brian Hartline here in a second. Indiana finishing at number 1 was obvious, but having Ohio State at number 2, I thought capped what was just a phenomenal weekend for the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Like these past 48, 72 hours could not have been better for the Big Ten. We were in Indianapolis Friday night. You guys saw the scenes just like I did. Like Indy was buzzing with those two fan bases in town. Obviously, the local ties for Indiana, and then, that program's history. For Ohio State, that fan base just travels all the time, but had some incentive with the fact that Ohio State hadn't done this, since 2020. And as the seconds are clicking down on just a horrid showing in the SEC championship game, where the second best team in the SEC lost to a horrible Florida State team and then got their ass kicked on national television against Georgia, it has you wondering if they even deserve to have been in the playoff. As that is like ticking down, Lucas Oil Stadium is like, you got a light show going on, you got wristbands flashing all these different lights, the teams are in and out of the huddles. Like, fans were in the stands well before kickoff. Granted, kickoff was supposed to be at 8. They showed up at 8:18. As Steven's showing me right now how Pavia is going to win the Heisman. Ridiculous.
I'm going to have an aneurysm.
Anyways, I'm not even going to do that. We'll save that for the Heisman pod, I guess. But you got the light show going on, the wristbands, fans in their seats well before. I thought it was about as close to 50-50 as you could get. Maybe 55-45 Indiana for the crowd split at Indianapolis. And then on top of that, you deliver an awesome game where both teams show you they're the 2 best teams in the country, and the college football playoff reflects that in their rankings and says, hey, I know we like to reward people for winning the conference title, but sorry, Georgia, Ohio State being close with Indiana was better than you doing what you did against Alabama. Those are still the top 2 teams. So the rankings, I thought, capped what was just an awesome 40 for the Big Ten, and we'll see. Hopefully it keeps rolling, right? I think you got Ohio State on one side of the bracket, you got Indiana and Oregon on the other side. I'd love to see 2 Big Ten teams meet again in the national championship game. That'd be sick. And kind of cap what's been an awesome run for the Big Ten. And I think the CFP rankings reflected that. If you're an Ohio State fan, I know you probably don't care, right? Your team lost. Like, I get it. This is where the run kind of starts for Ohio State. And I think everyone's still got a ton of confidence in what this team can do. But conference-wide, I can't imagine the folks in Indianapolis and the folks, Chicago and Big Ten offices could be much happier than what they got in Indianapolis, and the rankings kind of capped that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. Like, I have the bracket up, and this sport has gotten so politicized versus SEC versus Big Ten and Big Ten versus SEC, and where do the ACC and Big 12 and Notre Dame fit onto all of that and all this stuff. And you kind of look at what the quarterfinals are going to be, barring massive upsets. Ole Miss and Oregon are going to win, and then you get to the side where it's like, okay, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, because that's the 8-9. So it's going to be SEC versus Big 10 in the Rose Bowl, SEC in the Sugar Bowl. And then it's going to be Ohio State versus an SEC team or an ACC team. And I don't know A&M's currently a 4-point favorite. Would it stun you if Miami went down to College Station and won that game? Miami playing with some new life that maybe they didn't think they had 24 hours ago, 48 hours ago. I don't know. Even if A&M does win that game, I think we're all going to predict Ohio State to win. This is an interesting kind of point in the sport, because now you can start to stack data points where, I think we've talked about this before about, the SEC kind of having 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 really good teams, and then a bunch of just, is Tennessee ranked? Why is this team this and why this team's mid. And, I think there are a lot of people out there who would tell you that they don't think Alabama's that good, or they don't think Oklahoma's that good, and Ole Miss doesn't have a coach. And, we could very realistically get to a semifinal that's Big Ten, SEC, and Big Ten. If that's Oregon, Indiana, Georgia, and Ohio State, this could be yet another year where, like we had last year, where, what was it? It was Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, and Texas. And, the year before the Final Four, it was just a 4-team playoff. So that was obviously a little bit different. But the two finalists were Washington and Michigan. So you could very realistically kind of get to the end of the line here and map out a scenario of we've kind of been talking about it, but I do wonder if the national perception and the national conversation of we should probably start talking about the Big Ten and maybe their place and how people are talking about them in a national landscape, because at some point the evidence is going to become overwhelming, and I'm starting to wonder if this is maybe the year for that.
Third year in a row, by the way, the Big Ten has been undefeated in the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. It's been a different team every time, but the SEC is the better conference.
That's also impressive because you've had 3 teams be undefeated and be the number 1 seed, and then you also had a team that wasn't one of those that won a national title.
SEC mid. Let's take a break.
It's like that voice from the Amanda Show. Oh, you guys remember that? Or was that? Yeah, I think that was the Amanda Show. That was wild.
Take a break and then come back and talk about what we talked with Ryan Day about.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay, oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed-sponsored jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
While the Who's of Whoville were laughing and eating, the Grinch from his lair sought to wreak havoc on their season. He thought, how do I ruin their holiday meals? A plan sprang to mind, which he enacted with zeal. Dill pickle seasoning on fries will make for a green surprise. And I know they'll be shocked with these loathsome odd socks. So if you want to experience the Grinch's mischievous meal, head to McDonald's and show him how you really feel. The new Grinch meal, now at McDonald's. At participating McDonald's while supplies last.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. The Freddy Fazbear box just dropped at Popeyes for $7.99, and it's scary good. Garlic palm tenders and cheesy bites with marinara sauce. Upgrade to the deluxe box for $12.99 and get a 20-ounce drink in a cupcake cup. Dig in before it's too late. Try the Freddy Fazbear Crunch menu, now at Popeyes. See Five Nights at Freddy's 2, only in theaters. Love that chicken from Popeyes. Limited time at participating U.S. restaurants. Prices may vary.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. We did talk with Ryan Day on Sunday afternoon, about an hour after the rankings came out, and the conversation was about 2 things. What the heck was that on Saturday night? And what the heck is going on with Brian Hartline? Stefan, Brian Hartline got asked flat out who was calling the plays on Saturday night. Ryan Day said Brian Hartline was calling the plays. He got asked what the plan is going forward, as Brian Hartline, who is actively, as we're recording this podcast, making his way down to South Florida for his introductory press conference as the new head coach of the University of South Florida college football team. How is it going to work? He said that this week he will be spending time in South Florida some, but he will also be going back and forth over the next 3 to 4 weeks as Ohio State starts to ramp up for the college football playoff. I asked you guys on a video who you guys think is calling plays on December 31st when Ohio State takes the field. I'm going to ask you a different question here. We grade Julian Sand after every game. Grade Brian Hartline as Ohio State's play caller this season.
I give it a C. I think it's been up and down because I think as bad as it was against Indiana, Steven, it's like less than a month removed since we came out here after the Penn State game when we were like, Brian Hartline was in his bag and like was finally like really coming into form as a play caller, right? So it's I give it a C just because for all the weeks where it felt like an F, it felt like there were weeks where it was an A. But how about this? I'll say C minus because in the biggest game of the year so far, or at least the number 1 versus number 2 game, I guess the Michigan game was pretty big. It was rough. It was rough. It just felt like the team never really established much of a rhythm. It felt like the play calling was never really part of much of a rhythm, right? It was just like, we're going to do this. And then the kind of game goes on. It felt like they were stuck on still doing some things instead of going with the flow and making proper adjustments and things of that nature. So I'll give it a C minus this year.
Gillis, great Hartline.
I'll stick with C minus. I want to say D plus, but I'll stick with C minus because if we're going to go by the grading scale that I know and the grading scale that I towed the line of a lot in high school and college of A is excellent and B is above average and C is average and D is below average and F is a failure. I need you to tell me what you think of this. Ohio State is 18th in points per game. They averaged this year 34.9. Thank you for calling on Stefan first so I could look this up. They are 44th in rush attempts, in yards per attempt this year, 4.69. Yards per attempt passing, they are 7th at 9.3. Now, granted, they are behind Air Force and Navy, so kind of technically 5th because every time Air Force and Navy throw the ball, it's like a trick play. If you combined Air Force and Navy throwing the ball and all their attempts, you still don't have the total attempts that Ohio State has thrown. So, I don't know, 7th in passing in terms of yards per attempt on the season, 44th in rushing, and 18th in points. If C is average, do we not think that some dude could have also done that? Do we not, my question would be, Steven, you would know this name better than we do. Would Kevin Wilson have done exactly this or better? Could the bar have been this? Could Chip Kelly have done this or better? Could the random most Joe Schmo run-of-the-mill retread, he's been around college football for 15 years as a head coach and a coordinator and a play caller, and now he's Ohio State's OC. Could he have done that? Frankly, probably. I think so. You've got a Heisman contending quarterback, or a Heisman finalist quarterback, I should say. Hopefully, we'll see at this point. He should be in New York, I think. You've got the best receiver in the sport. You've got who I think is the second best receiver in the sport. I know the offensive line has been a work in progress and sometimes downright bad. And the running game has been something that I think has been more of a work in progress. But I don't know. I haven't seen a ton of flair. I know that's part of the way that they've played. But I look at this offense and there hasn't been a ton of imagination to it. There hasn't been a ton of explosiveness to it that you would want. And I think Hartline has been fine. I think he was probably a C plus maybe last night, but they played their best opponent and they scored 10 points. And that has to matter. I'm sorry, scoring 10 points against Indiana matters more to me than scoring 34 against Illinois, than scoring 40 whatever against a team that's currently sitting at home and they're not even going.
We pointed out too, things weren't looking great in that Illinois game either. They scored 34 points, but their rushing attack was not doing anything.
Yeah.
I will say one more thing I'll mention too on my C minus. One thing that kind of has been surprising is maybe the depth or lack thereof at wide receiver. That falls on him, right? And listen, he's the best receivers coach maybe in college football history, right? But this year the receiver depth has not been what it's typically been. That's on him.
My question to you would be if Ohio State was unable to play, and this is expanding outwards of Hartline's responsibilities a little bit, but if Ohio State was unable to play a certain amount of offensive linemen, we would look at Tyler Bowen and say, what the hell's going on? If Ohio State had 1 or 2 tight ends that they could play, we would look at Keenan Bailey and say, what are you doing? Same with Carlos Loughlin, same with Billy Fessler. They've got 3.5 receivers right now that they trust when healthy. Quincy Porter's been hurt all year, so I don't know how much you factor him in. We saw David Adolph playing against Rutgers and against UCLA. So I don't know. It feels like something we'd be critical of for every other room. So it feels like we can be critical about maybe why the depth hasn't evolved there as well. And that's certainly part of it, but yeah, C minus, I think.
I think the overall numbers are what they are. This offense, the floor of this offense is still super high. So you're asking, could these numbers have been what they were if Kevin Wilson was calling the plays, or if Chip Kelly was here still, or Ryan Day was calling the plays? They probably would have just been the same numbers because, yeah, they had a good running game last year. They also had a left side that featured 2 first-rounders and a Remington Award. They don't have those this year. They have a good left side. It's not as good as last year's left side. Our Texans gave him a B. 51% actually gave him a B. 35% gave him a C. 8% gave him an A. I am going to give him D plus. And it's the receivers. I mean, I don't know how much of that is like on him in a world where I think sometimes it's okay to be like, I mean, the reputation is the reputation. So like, do what that guy tells you to do, and he brought you here to be next in line. You got it, but you also have to go do that, right? Give us your first year here. How often do we see receivers following Marv out to the Monarch? Like every day. How often have we seen that in the last 2 years? Like, we know JJ works hard. We know Carnell works hard. We know Brandon Ennis works hard. Do we know that about the guys behind them? And that's not to say they don't or don't. It's just there was a visual representation when a lot of these guys first got here of how this is done by a guy who won a Biletnikoff Award, was the Heisman Trophy finalist, and probably should have 2 Biletnikoff Awards. And by another guy, like Emeka and Marvin showed them what to do. And that is the room where, of all the rooms, it is probably the most player room. And because it's worked. The player-led way is how Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, they came in here in a room where KJ Hill was in it. And Paris Campbell and Terry McLaurin, like they showed him how to do this. So like I'm less inclined to be like, hey, Brian Hartline took over offensive coordinator, and now all of a sudden his receivers aren't good. Versus like, okay, what's going on? Are dudes doing the necessary things there? So I am not going to blame him simply because that reputation and that proof of concept is so high right now that it would take a couple of years before I went, what's going on here? The reason I'm giving him a D is because I think where you wanted to see growth from Brian Hartline was in situations, you know, 3rd and long, 3rd and short, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, red zone, gotta have it situations where I don't feel like there was growth. I feel like there was stagnation. And I never felt consistent rhythm. You're right, Stefan. We left that Penn State game and we're like, man, Brian Hartline's got this thing down pat. Even the Michigan game, I think he found a rhythm. But there were too many games this year where it felt like Brian wasn't in a rhythm, didn't have the art of play calling down. There wasn't this things are building on each other. It felt like if it's 3rd and long, CJ Donaldson's coming in to play running back. If it's 3rd and short and we're on the 15-yard line, we're going I formation, 13 personnel, and we're going to try to run it up somebody's back. If we're on the goal line, 1st down, we're going to fade it to Jeremiah Smith. 2nd down, we're going to try to run it. 3rd down, we're going to try to run it. And 4th down, if we go for it, we're going to play action to a tight end. And that predictability, that stagnation, that lack of creativity, but then they would swing the entire other way and almost get too creative, right? The entire third quarter of not the entire third quarter, but there was a huge chunk of the third quarter where they're just like running play action, long developing plays. And the offensive line couldn't hold up for them. And some of that is on Tegra Shabola on the right side of the offensive line. And even Luke Montgomery and Austin Saravel weren't perfect. So some of that is personnel not executing those things. But also, you didn't like build up to the shot. The thing about they ran the same play against Indiana that they ran against Michigan, and I got Carnell Tate a 50-yard touchdown. Except they built up to the shot where you could feel it. You could feel it ramping up. And then and then it hit, and we're all like, kill shot. That'll do. That's game. They didn't build up to that stuff against Indiana. It just it looked like Ohio. It looked like Illinois. It looked like Washington, where it was like, all right, we just fiddled around for 8 minutes, but now we need to go score a touchdown. Here's a tunnel screen to Jeremiah Smith that gives us a 7-3 lead at halftime against Washington. Oh, we're going to run a end around handoff to Jeremiah Smith against Illinois, but because nobody blocked, Smith gets flipped on his back, right? There was no rhythm to it, no purpose to it at times. And I think that's where you wanted to see Brian grow, because you saw Julian grow. You saw Julian go from, and he wasn't perfect, right? He missed some throws as well, but you could tell every week that there was something new that he wasn't doing the week before. I didn't always feel that way about Brian Hartline, which leads us into our next question. Ryan Day should. I know Ryan has told us what he's going to do, but this is what I gave to our Texans. Ryan Day should let Brian Hartline finish the season, but Ryan Day takes over play calling. Let Brian Hartline finish the season as the play caller. Send Hartline on his way and take over the offense completely. Stefan, what would you do?
I would let him continue calling plays, but I would be watching very closely how much he can actually balance everything that's going on. On paper, I think it's a great idea that he can kind of balance things. You know, this week, it's not going to be a ton going on for the players and coaches, right? So it makes sense for him to, be in South Florida this week. But if he has to miss any practice, or if he has to miss a meeting or something like that, like if it's not 100% everything that he's giving you to this point, then I think you really need to reconsider it. So I think Ryan Day is comfortable and would let him keep calling plays. You just have to be watching very closely.
Yeah, I said I think I said in our video I think it's a quick hook, right? Like I think you can, like if you don't think it's going to be feasible, then that's fine. The more that I think about it, the more you start to kind of talk yourself into maybe Ryan Day just taking over play calling now and just doing it now. Stefan, you mentioned in our video, which is now up on YouTube, like you mentioned our video, like Ryan Day's got to worry about the portal, and Ohio State's got to figure out the portal. So does Brian Hartline. Like, and I know there's a lot of people listening to this who are saying, but he's an Ohio State coach. His responsibility is here. You're not wrong. He also now, by virtue of him taking that job, has a responsibility to South Florida and the school that's given him a 6-year contract. And he has a responsibility to those players too, because he's going to build relationships with those players and he's going to build relationships with those recruits. So Brian Hartline also has some stuff to do that is more than just, hey, he's got to go like figure out where he wants to live in Tampa and find out.
I don't think. I mean, yeah, I don't think he's the one picking those situations. That's what.
No, but I think
you have family for.
Yeah, right. And there's a lot of that, but like that's an interesting wrinkle that like Stefan brought it up, and I thought, yeah, he's right about Day, and then I thought to myself, Brian Hartline and Ryan Day are about to be, in terms of job titles, equal. They're both head coaches. They both can play. Hey, South Florida, Ohio State playing in the college football playoff? Possibility in 2026. Is it likely? Probably not. But it's a possibility now. And it could be Brian Hartline on one sideline being a head coach and Ryan Day on the other. So Steven started laughing when I said that, but it's true. And like, I start to think about this scenario, and it's like, they're introducing him. Stefan just retweeted something about like him going down to Florida. They're going to officially introduce him as coach. He has 2 responsibilities now, and I just wonder if it's easier to just do it now than rather say, well, we'll just see how it looks. So we'll see.
I think Ryan Day should call plays and call it a day. It's there's a lot happening, and I do actually agree with you, Stefan, that let's spend the next 3. I think they should spend the next 3 weeks seeing how things go. You ramp it up. But I think when you touch down in Dallas, Texas, on what is that, they get there December 28th, you should already know who's calling plays. And then you spend the next 2 practices down there ahead of the game, operating as if that human being is calling plays. I believe it should be Ryan Day, because this is the best time for him to be able to do that. Because his program is stable. He's got people in place. There's people who look into the portal. At the end of the day, it's like, if they're looking for a tight end, Keenan Bailey's going to talk to him. They're looking for a wide receiver. Right now, probably Devin Jordan's going to be the guy talking to him. If they're looking for a corner, it's going to be Tim Walton. I'm not saying they're looking at all these positions. If it's going to be a running back, it's going to be Carlos Lockton. I mean, the portal works no different than recruiting in terms of who's talking to people. And then Ryan Day's job is to come in and be a closer in some of these things. While Brian Hartline, when you're starting from scratch, he probably does have to be a lot more hands-on with both roster retention and roster acquisition right now, right? Like USF just brought in a recruiting class. Does Brian Hartline know any of those people? Probably not, right? Does Brian Hartline's probably not even looked at USF's roster and see what he needs. Ryan Day knows already what Ohio State needs in the transfer portal. And even if guys are not officially in the portal yet, because it's not open yet, Stefan, he has an idea of who they're going to attack in the portal, right? Brian Hartline's going to be learning that over the next week, right? And so I agree. I think they should spend the next 3 weeks seeing how well Brian Hartline balances both of those things. When Brian Hartline first became an offensive coordinator in 2023, he brought up organization a lot. And a lot of times if you just stay organized, you can have success at things. Okay, this is the ultimate test of that and how organized he can be when there's going to be some days where he's waking up and it's warm outside, and some days he's going to be waking up and see snow outside. And if Ryan Day, if they take off for Dallas and Ryan Day looks at Brian Hartline and it's like, man, he's handling this really, really well and trust him enough, all right, let him keep it. But it needs to be how it was in the Big Ten Championship game where we're all like, is Ryan Day actually calling the plays? Because that play sheet looks mad active. But if Ryan Day has any inkling that Brian Hartline is trying to juggle too many things, Ryan Day needs to be calling the plays in the college football playoff. And that doesn't mean he needs to resort back to that next year. I think he still needs to go find an offensive coordinator. But in the meantime, do I think Ohio State can win a national championship with Ryan Day coaching 3 games? Yeah, I 100% believe that, especially since he's not going to be focused on anything else. Last question, because it is playoff time, and I have to ask the Texans this. It's never going away. Someone asks us, like, can you please not ask us this question? And she was like, no, I can't make that promise. I'm going to ask you every step of the way. Is being an Ohio State fan still fun? Yes or no? Stefan, what do you think the split was?
I would imagine that 90% of people said yes.
Okay, 90% your guess. Gillis, what you guess?
I'm going to guess it's a little lower, like 85.
85% is your guess. You think there are 15% of our texters who are not having fun rooting for their reigning national champion, Ohio State Buckeyes. You, sir, are incorrect. But also, Stefan, you think there are 10% of the world in this text group who think this is no longer fun. You, sir, are also incorrect. 95%, and I'll refresh it again to make sure. Yeah, 95% are still having fun.
That's good. Football,
what a different world we were in than where we were 365 days ago. Are you guys having fun?
Yeah.
I'm tired.
Yeah, you can be fired and have fun.
Also,
you having fun?
It is funny. Like Ryan Day is being asked about, how the team's going to move on from this 13-10 loss, and our texters were asked if they were having fun after last year's 13-10 loss. This 13-10 loss has come with a little bit of different reaction, I think, from everybody, which is I think a healthy thing for everybody.
Because it's no emotional tie behind this. It's just Indiana played better in situations than you did.
Yeah, I saw a video this morning. Video this morning on social media. I'm sure some of our listeners come across this content. Ohio State, the Ohio State fan for Barstool, he posted a video where he was like, "Woke up this morning after my favorite team lost, and like I do not feel the pain that I felt like every other time Ohio State has lost a football game." So I think Ohio State fans are like understanding of, okay, you lost a game to the number one team in the country. You move on. Playoff is still ahead of you. It was an inconsequential game, but next time you're on the field, better not look like that.
Yeah,
we trust you because you showed us last year that we could trust you. Better not look like that in 20 days.
That's what I was going to ask. Do we think that because of they want a natty coming out of this type of concept that everybody can just chill in a way that had they lost in like the semifinal, I don't know if people would be as chill.
It's benefit of doubt. We had this conversation last year. We were going into the 2024 college football season, and we were all saying this Ohio State team is loaded, but Georgia is preseason number one. Why? Kirby Smart to that point had earned the benefit of the doubt. I think Ohio State to this point has earned the benefit of the doubt. Ryan Day has earned that. We said it with Matt Patricia. Once you win a natty, things change. He hired Matt Patricia. We said, all right, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. It worked out. Promoted Brian Hartline. All right, get the benefit of the doubt. However you feel that's worked out, it's gone that way. And now going into this playoff, coming off a loss, why should I trust that you can turn this into a college football playoff run? You just did it last year after a much tougher emotional loss to have to move on.
I'm just going to let you guys know that these two were not talking like this on the drive home, but I'll let that be what it is. Maybe I'll share it with the texter. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Ohio State headed to the Cotton Bowl for their first college football playoff game. They will play Miami, but they will play Texas A&M, depending on who wins that game. Again, the schedule this week, Stefan and I are going to rewatch the Big Ten Championship game and sit down and break down what happened, what went wrong in that game. And I almost want to play like, here are their X amount of plays. Can Ohio State keep this, or do they need to throw it out? And kind of go from there with it. Gillis and I will come back Wednesday and actually talk about the Ohio State football recruiting class, the wins, the losses, the negotiations, the weirdness, the funness, all of it in between. And then we'll talk about a little bit of Heisman stuff. That stuff does come out Monday evening. They're doing it during a basketball game, the most prestigious award in college football, and we're announcing the finalists during a basketball game.
No, it's Monday night countdown, I think.
Okay, so the most prestigious award in college football, and we're announcing it during the pregame of a Monday Night Football game?
Let me see how good the Monday Night Football game is before I decide. Let's see who's playing. Eagles-Chargers, you got the reigning Super Bowl champs. Reigning Super Bowl champs who are oddly having issues on offense.
So the Ohio State Buckeyes are the pros. Huh. All right, well, yeah, we'll bring that news to you through the text, and you know the spiel. 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis, I'm Stephen Means. Talk to you guys later.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.